Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace, loved ones. I pray you're well wherever you may be in the universe. This is Baraka Blue, and you are tuned into Path and Present. Before I introduce the guest for this week's podcast, I want to let everybody know that I have some tour dates. I am going to be in Lebanon in September 11th through 12th. I'm going to be in the United Kingdom after that from the 12th to the 24th. And then hopefully I'll be in Germany after that. We're still working on some of the dates and nailing some of that down. So all the specific dates and cities are on my Facebook. You can check that out, Baraka Blue on Facebook. And yeah, we're looking to book a few more cities and maybe a few more countries. There's a few talks in the work. So if you're interested in bringing us out and you're in Europe, just send us an email, connect@barakablue.com. And we look forward to seeing all our loved ones in Europe and the UK and the Middle East and Beirut. Cool. So this week's podcast is with Antar Hanif. Antar is a photographer, and he's currently in Southeast Asia shooting some travel photography. And he came and visited, and I met him here in Bali, Indonesia, and we had a good conversation. We spent a few days together, and I taught him how to ride a motorbike, which is the mode of transportation in this part of the world, and he did a great job. In fact, he never fell once. He had some close calls, but never fell once, which is more than I can say of my first week learning. I remember Anis Cannon, my DJ, my brother. He taught me to learn in Bali about 3-4 years ago when we were on tour in Indonesia. And between tour dates, we came to Bali to just hang out and work on music. And he's a longtime motorcycle rider, so he was a pro with it. But basically, out here on a motorbike, it's sink or swim because there's like thousands of cars and bikes racing by at all times. So basically, I hopped on it, learned what things do. That's a brake, that's accelerate. And then it's like, all right, go on a super busy street. And I was like, well, you either sink or you swim right now. And luckily I swam. I almost sunk. I fell into a ditch my second or third day, which wasn't pretty. It was because I was going through cars, weaving through cars, which is something that you do commonly there. And there's like holes in the side of the road. And because it was so small, and I tried to hit brake but accidentally hit accelerate because I was still learning, I basically just accelerated into a ditch and got covered in some funky ditch fluid. But luckily I didn't hurt myself. I mean, easily could have. But I just scraped up my leg and I was all right. But Antar had better luck than me, or more skill than me, I should say. And he did it like a pro, and we mobbed all over the island, so it was fun. It was fun to teach him. So yeah, man, he's a great photographer, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about the art of photography and how looking through the lens affects the way you look through your own eye at the world. So we talked a lot about that. Cool. So I'll give the podcast to you without further ado, let you listen. But before I do, I want to say if you could support the podcast, please do so by subscribing on iTunes, rating, liking on iTunes. That helps it go up in the charts. And then if you have the ability to give financially, even $1 or $5 or anything, that's great. That helps us to stay ad-free and helps us to do this on a consistent basis. And you can do so through patreon.com/pathandpresent, and the link is on our SoundCloud. And that helps especially now because one of our earliest and biggest supporters, named Hala, much love to Hala. She's one of the main reasons that I did this, actually. Like, she came from the jump and supported and has the whole time, which we've been doing this like almost 2 years now, or a year and a half. But anyway, she recently moved to Mauritania, which is her homeland, and she's doing some aid work and some service. So she said, I'm no longer in the financial position to give. So I said, it's all right. Anyway, if anybody else wants to pick up the slack, it's all love. And shout out to Hala. Yeah, we're sending her our du'as as we speak. Cool. Here's Antar Hanif. One love. They'll get you. Bismillah. So, we're here in Bali. I'm with Antar Hanif, a.k.a. I Am Shooter.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The man, the myth, the legend. Alhamdulillah, it's good to have you, good to host you since I've had you in the warehouse. Rest in peace, long live the warehouse. You know, for those that don't know, we had a dope artist live workspace in Oakland, California, 1919 Market Street. It was a very powerful, beautiful, creative space, sometimes called the Barzakh, which means the intermediary realm, the realm between two different worlds. And it felt like that. It was a beautiful space, a huge space in an old warehouse, and many powerful, beautiful artists lived there, including Amir Suleiman, Mark Gonzalez, Ahlam, Abdul Jalil, Zainab Saeed, myself, Brother Ali, Angelique, 23 Tribes, and many others. And we just always had gatherings. We had iftars. We had, jam sessions. We recorded songs there. It was a creatively powerful space and just like an organic community hub in the Bay Area. There was no, advertising. There was no budget. It was just people opening their space, you know what I mean? And the city shut it down about 1.5 years ago. So it no longer is a physical location. They actually tore down the building, bro. Last time I was in Oakland, I drove by, and it's like they gutted the whole building. But anyway, you used to come through when you were in the Bay and stay with us, stay on our couch. So it's good to host you again here in Bali, Indonesia.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. It's similar vibes, just more mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you having me.
No doubt.
Let me come through.
So I know you've been traveling a lot. I want to get into that and hearing your insights on, just traveling and what that does for you, what that does to you. But first, I want to talk about your art, photography, because we were walking on the beach the other day when you first arrived, and you mentioned that you don't like to have your camera with you the first few days when you arrive in a place. You like to just take it in and observe it. And then you mentioned about the tones and the like subtleties. For instance, you mentioned when you're in India that you put you kind of like expose the pictures in a specific way because of like the level of dust in the air, and you made them warmer essentially, if I remember correctly. And it just got me thinking about the fact that like whatever we devote ourselves to will alter the way we experience the world. Like, for instance, like I mentioned to you, whenever I'm in like a restaurant or a cafe or a freaking grocery store or whatever, and there's music on, I can't not hear the lyrics. And I'm like totally tuned into the lyrics, what's being said. If there's a powerful lyric, if there's a weak lyric, like I can't tune it out. You know what I mean? And other people, like, I think about my homie Abdul Malik, who's a producer, and so he's always like sampling records. But I remember like he was in my apartment one day, and I like set down a glass on the table, and he was like, "Hey, hold on, do that again. And he was like, boom. He was like, oh, all right. And he took the glass, and he's like dropping it in various ways, and then he like gets out his laptop and his mic, and he's like, I gotta record this. I'm about to sample it. You know what I mean? Like he's hears the world as a potential beat. You know what I mean? Like sampling parts. So you were sharing about how looking through a lens as a photographer alters the way you see the world, even when there is not a lens except for your eye. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. So exactly. It's a thinking about that. I mean, it's interesting that I feel like artistry or creativity is kind of this ability to take the ordinary and make it extraordinary. And so, we look at things and we kind of pass them every day, and it's not that we necessarily take them for granted, but it is what it is to us. Like this is that. We might not consider it a piece of art. We might not consider it special. But that gets into, just leaving outside of your environment, seeing other environments. It opens up kind of your mindset, and it exposes you to different things. And so by seeing other people's worlds, or seeing other worlds or other places and other spaces, one, you're able to almost appreciate the ordinary in those spaces. And then hopefully out of that, you come back to your own space, and you're able to see your own space through kind of a new lens. And that kind of informs, I guess, the work that I do, or the way that I kind of take pictures. And so to me, taking a photograph is really a physical manifestation of something that I saw. And so taking the picture, I'm a pretty technical person. And so physically taking the picture is really not that difficult in the overall scheme of things. For the most part, the camera does all the work. So you just kind of push the button. I mean, it's not the 1930s, where you got to do all this extra stuff and you got to kind of guess. You push the button, you don't like it, you look at the back, you delete it, or you take another one. So you can pretty much kind of wing it and come out with something pretty cool, or at least okay for the most part. But, to train your eyes to see the world, or to really have a vision, or to interpret that through that type of device is a much harder thing to do. So in a way, I guess it's when I enter into a place, I mean, every place is different. Every place has some type of uniqueness to it, even if it's the same. So I kind of try to see the world. I try to see that place first, so I don't just try to start off taking pictures of it, because I just try to live in it. I try to listen to the sounds, look at what the people are doing, and like try to see what's unique about this space. Is it the sky? Is it, is it that? I mean, I've learned so much being in Bali, even on the beach, so we're walking down the beach we were talking about, and, I'm just taking in all the nuances. Like one of the aspects, I look at the sand and I'm like, the sand looks black, like this is a different type of sand. And then I kind of get closer to it and I kind of look at it, and, then you start telling me about it and why it's that way. And, but when most people think of a beach, they typically think of either, like brighter sand or white sand or lighter sand. And so, but that changes the way the landscape looks. So the sun's coming down, it's this darker sand, it's kind of this richer sand. So it looks like dirt, but it's not dirt, because there's white specks because there's shells in it, And then, you've got the sun coming down, and then it's overcast or a little overcast. And so, when the sun comes through clouds in the sunset, it changes the color of the sun at sunset. And then there's people on the beach, and there's cliffs, and there's water coming in, and it's coming in, and it's coming out. And, and then even here, you might have people burning stuff, so there's smoke in the air. And so I feel like I just kind of need to live in a place a bit before, because I'm not trying to, in a way, some people take photos as they are. Like I'm not a journalist. I'm not a photojournalist. I'm not I'm not in Baghdad, trying to be impartial per se to the, to the world, where it's like, okay, like there was a kid that was standing there, and I'm not trying to add any type of extraness to it or any type of flair.
Yeah, a lot of people like trying to tell a story, right? They're using their photo to like tell a story in a narrative.
Or even, it's, because like a journalist is trying not to tell, they're trying not to tell a story. They're trying to almost capture it as it is. And then, you kind of take from that as it is, a photojournalist anyway. But for me, I'm trying to show you as I see it. And a lot of times that's not how it looks. You snap a photo, I look at it, I'm like, that's not how I felt when I stood there, the waves or this. And so I'm trying to capture that. And so to capture it, I have to exist in it. And so that gets into, this idea of like, okay, kind of what is a camera? And so for the most part, like we're human beings. And in that, we've got all these senses, we've got smell, we've got, hearing and that. And it really kind of informs how we see a place. That's why, people, you're parking your car, you turn your radio down. It's like, how does that affect your vision? But it affects kind of your awareness of the space, right? Like, hold up, I got to be quiet, man. Like, I got to focus.
Or you could even say the way, certain people who are, are impaired in specific function, for instance, they can't hear as well, they tend to be able to have other things heightened.
Exactly.
Or, the example that we see like time and time again is the people that can't see that well. They can hear incredibly well. They're, so many great musicians, for instance. And actually, I heard in Egypt, in Al-Azhar, traditionally, there was a whole, I believe it was in Al-Azhar, there was a whole specific department for the blind Quran reciters. Because it was understood that their memory is going to be better. They're going to be able to understand the nuance of, the actual science of recitation. And so, because they're not necessarily going to be able to be out doing certain other functions and labors, and it's more difficult for them to, plow the field or have a shop. But, they could easily memorize Quran and then be these repositories and so have a role in the society.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, so it kind of so with that kind of being said, you've got this the way we take in the world is in one particular way, but a camera in and of itself is extremely limiting. So even if you look at film, the movements and dolly movements, and what are dolly movements even for? I mean, because the camera can't like our eyes are constantly panning and scanning across a scene, racking focus and doing stuff. So we take in this encompassing view of a thing. So a camera, like I said, it's a limited object. And so what we're doing is we're taking a three-dimensional world, right? Kind of seen as experienced, really, because we don't see it. We're experienced as a three-dimensional object. And we're trying to narrow it through a two-dimensional plane and a two-dimensional object to then be viewed by three-dimensional beings. And to somehow...
And to simulate that three-dimensional reality.
Yeah, what did that... I look at this photograph and what did it feel like? What did it sound like and smell like to be there, right? And so to do that, at least for me, is that I have to then be able to process the world as a three-dimensional being, object, but then distill that through two-dimensional eyes. I have to almost limit my vision to the point where I'm rejecting other things that I know the camera won't see. So I'm looking at a pillow right now, but I'm looking at it, but I'm not really moving left to right. I know that this lens is going to be that wide, this far, right? And then this other lens is going to be right here. So I can almost take pictures without ever having the camera up. So now it's just a matter of, is this device going to match what I kind of see in my head? So, and then going to different places, I feel like they all have a character. They all have almost like an essence to them, from the people. And, so you
places have a personality.
Exactly. And so I'm trying to capture the personality of a city. And India was like an interesting kind of spot because it was so dusty that just all the light had this, it wasn't even a hate to describe it, just even at night. The cars coming through and the people, and then and the colors in India, they're like spices, so it's like everything is like these saffrons and these turmeric and right, so these yellows and these oranges and these reds and this, and it's kind of like a dusty, and so you'll notice that, and then the people and the modes of transportation, and so I just kind of kick it with the people. I just walk around. People walk this way, they catch the train. I see how people do, how they sit. how they're working. And so it had a whole vibe. So it felt warm to me in general. And so when I took the photos, I tried to invoke what that felt like to be there.
Yeah, I like what you said about feeling. And things feel a specific way. And it's interesting, like, when we come into a room, there's so many things that we see, but we don't see. Like, we see, but we're not conscious of. And at any given time, it's natural. It's like your brain filters certain things because there's too much input. Like, if you're looking at anything, any direction, like right now, we're in this villa, and there's like couches, tables, there's like all these trees over there, flowers. I mean, there's pots, there's, paintings on the wall, books on the shelf. Like, you can't focus on all that thing. So your brain like filters into what's important. What are we doing right now? So we're having a conversation. So like, in a certain sense, you're in focus and everything else is like soft focus.
Yeah.
But with a camera, it's not like that. I mean, sometimes you might not notice something, but then you take a picture and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that was in the
exactly
frame.
And it's what's trippy is that even the method of it. So like even a still photograph versus, let's say, moving pictures, is that in a moving picture, the aggregate whole can make up for the insufficiencies in the immediate. But in a still photograph, you're really capturing a moment in time. And so you'll notice something in a still photograph, and you're like, like that you won't notice in real life, that you won't notice because the picture never changes. So you get a picture, you put it up on the wall, you might stare at it for years. Then you might be like, and one day you notice something that wasn't there, or another thing. So there's this level of, and then the picture changes depending upon how you change. So then you change and you start to see it different. You have to understand different things. And so it's a snapshot, but it's a limiting snapshot because it tells a part of a story, but not the whole story. One person can take a photograph, and that's what's wonderful. Is one person can take a photograph one way, and another can take another way. And a lot of it just has to be with how they see the world. There was a photographer, I don't remember. I don't know why I can't remember what his name is, but he's a commercial photographer. And a lot of his work, all his work is just desaturated and super contrasty. And when he talks about it, it's because he's partially colorblind. So for him, vibrant colors don't have the same effect. Like, it's like he can't really see it anyway. So he desaturates a lot of his stuff to try to make them more consistent. And then he likes to contrast it because those are the things he notices. Or another photographer friend of mine, one day he was working on his images. And I said, why is why is all your stuff has like this greenish cast to it? And he was like, like it has like a greenish cast to it, And so then he ends up telling me that like there's certain colors he has difficulty seeing, like reds and such. So I'm like, okay, so you actually don't notice that has a greenish tint to it, or so this, like for me, like a part of my work is a certain way. Like I don't like out of focus images, like not sharp, because I have really good vision. So it makes me feel like I'm losing my sight. So if I see an image and it's soft, like it just bothers me. So it's like I can't, or I did this test and I have like perfect color vision, so like I can detect, like that color is not the same as that color. If it's off, it bothers me. And so there's so all these things kind of inform what you're doing. But back to like I said, when I'm in a place, I don't like to just pull the camera out, because once I pull the camera out, it changes how people behave, changes how, I'm trying to just observe first. And then I kind of know what I'm looking for. There's a vibe I'm going for, and I know what to take or what not to take, or, how I want to capture the place as a whole through either a collection of images or kind of one. And that's really, I'm just looking for something. I'm just looking for something that's inspiring or unique or just kind of tells that story.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about like how taking out a camera can alter things, because all of a sudden when we become conscious, like, oh, there's a camera, oh, I'm on film, all of a sudden there's this natural inclination to be unnatural, or like you try to be natural, but you know what I mean? Like it's like, and it's interesting, like I always think about one of my favorite art forms is comedy, because it's, on one level it's just because it's so similar to like spoken word poetry because it's just like getting up on stage. There's nothing but you and a mic. You don't even need a mic necessarily, and the crowd. And, you know, it's very easy to fail in that situation. Like, it's one thing because I also perform, you know, with music or with a DJ. And, like, if it's that, then people don't really have to, a lot of people don't even listen to what I say because, like, certain people are just musical. Like, there's certain people that just hear the lyrics dominant, other people that hear the music. And other people, certain frequencies of the music. Like, some people it's just bass. Other people, it's the more high part. Some people it's drums, you know? So, point being is, when it's just you and your voice and the mic and the crowd, there's something super intense about it. But even still, it's not as intense as being a comedian. Because if I do a poem and people are like, you know, listening quietly, and then, you know, people are generally going to be cool, polite to a certain extent. You know
They'll pretend to like it.
Saying.
Or to get it.
Exactly. Exactly.
They'll pretend to get it.
If you're telling a joke, you're gonna know if it went over well or not. Like, there's nobody's fake laughing for your benefit. No, you know what I mean? People might be clapping for your benefit. Nobody's fake laughing. So it's like this really intense art form. You know, I don't even remember why I brought that up, but something about comedy.
It was connected to bringing the camera out. When you bring the camera out, it kind of changes the essence of people.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. So, like, you know, I mean, growing up, right, you know pretty soon, like, who's the funny kid on your block or in your neighborhood or in your class, right? It's the class clown. Oh, there's just certain kids that are just funnier than everyone, and everything they say makes you laugh. And, you know, you would assume that, look, all you have to do is just be you, and you could have a career in this, you know? But the thing is go on stage and try to be the natural you. And you know what I mean? It takes years, actually, to learn how to be the natural you as you are without having to think about it.
Yep.
It's just like that, all of a sudden, when a mic is on, when you're in front of people, we have to train ourselves to be natural again.
To almost not panic.
Right.
You know, to not try to
not be self-conscious, really.
You know, like, these people are paying attention to what I'm saying. How am I saying? And you start thinking about it. You know, what am I doing? And, you know, and I mean, the camera definitely does that, especially when you're traveling a different place. The moment you pull it out, people always feel this implication to want to pose, to look at you and smile. And not even just in a, like, I'm still doing what I'm doing, I recognize you, hey, what's up? But like you know, like, they feel like they have to perform. Yeah. The camera comes out, they feel like, I got to perform. Like, you know, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, I don't want you to do anything.
Yeah, I noticed, like, I was on tour in the UK with Imam Siraj Rahaj. It was a great honor. And there was this photographer there that was, like, following the tour. And he told me, like, after a few days, he's like, because, you know, there's a lot of group photos. So, you know, in a group photo. And he was just telling me, he goes, you lean. In a group photo, you lean in. He goes, just stand up straight. I was like, I didn't even realize that. And then I looked back at a bunch of photos he took, and I was like, sure enough, I was leaning into the group unconsciously. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're all here together. And so then I was like, dang, I got to, like, not lean. But, you know, we do, like, subconscious thing. And the other thing that I think about, like, one thing I really don't like is, like, I love candid photos. And so the phenomenon of just smiling in a photo, like a fake smile, like, it really bothers me. One of the deepest things, if you look at old photos, like, look at old photos of, like indigenous, like, chiefs, like Black Elk and stuff like that. Like, well, not only the indigenous people, First Nations, but anyone, like, no one smiled in those first, like, it just wasn't a thing. And, like, there was a certain, like, the people were regal. Like, you could even say somber to a certain extent, but more just, like, regal. And then at some point, this idea, like, everyone should be smiling, like, develops. Like, where does that come in? It's so weird.
I mean, I think some of that is attached to just the nature of how photography has changed and what is a photograph. And so you go back kind of historically speaking, you know, like, what is that process? You've got a guy showing up with the big tent thing with a glass pane and a thing, and he's setting up, you know, maybe he pulls lights out, maybe he pulls reflectors if it's the daytime, and you're sitting there watching him pretty much build a machine, right? So he's building it, and you're looking at him. Maybe he's talking to you, maybe he's not, right? And then afterwards, it's that, and you're sitting there, and maybe he's got 2 plates of film, right? So you're like, I mean, this is the photograph, and it's not like, you're not going to post it anywhere, right? There's no mechanism for it. So you don't know what this photo's for. You don't know where you don't really know where it's going. This is probably the only photograph you'll ever have in your life, if you even get the photograph, right? So this person's documenting something. It's almost like if someone came to you and said that the Smithsonian came to your house to take a photograph of you and your family. Like, how would you want to be in that? You'd pick what you were going to wear different. You're like, this is going to be in a museum for like all time. And so I feel like just people, and then, maybe like their concept of what a photograph even was and how it was going to be, like, they didn't know. So they would just come and they would just be ready. And I think the photographers would just tell people, okay, we'll stand like that and just get it perfect and be right and be cordial or just to be proper. And it had a heavier weight kind of to it. So we look back at some of these older photographs and you're like, yeah, there's this guy, or this chief, and, there's 2 photographs of him ever. Like, that's it, right? So, but now there's almost this disposable, nature of a photograph. There's so many, just click, 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 click. Okay, it doesn't matter. If I don't like it, I can toss it away. You know what? I'll smile in it. We'll snap a shot. Plus I also think it's connected to just the way that we see images. Like, we want people to be happy, all the time. We want to feel that they're happy. We want people to think that we're happy. We want people to think that we're enjoying ourselves and that. So it's a part of just, people can't just be not even necessarily somber. They just can't, you can't be contemplative and, it's like, what's wrong? Are you all right? It's like, I'm just thinking, man. I'm just, So it's an interesting kind of situation. I mean,
so you try to essentially like blend into the background so that what the photo you're taking is natural, so that you're kind of like a invisible part of the world.
Exactly. I don't, like, I've developed various techniques, like new techniques of shooting out of traveling the world. So traditionally speaking, I am a commercial photographer. Portraiture is really mainly like my thing, but commercial photography, fashion, things like that. So, when you're working for a brand, they generally have an idea of what they want. I mean, to an extent, but for the most part, like, okay, we shoot it, we get what I want, when I'm happy, people know that you're taking their photograph, and you're either directing them to be more natural or less natural, or, okay, pose here, do that. When you're taking pictures of people, like I said, it's like scientific measurement, like the very nature of measuring a thing changes its essence in a way. So, so you can never, like, you stick the thermometer in the water, just the aspect of doing that subtly still changes that. Sure. If it's a smaller piece of water and it's a bigger thermometer, you might, and it's cold, you're like, well, you just dropped it a certain amount of temperatures or whatever. And so, so I've developed new techniques to take pictures, either to get quicker, either to make it less obtrusive. So I use this smaller lens, a pancake lens. It's super small. And some people might be like, the quality isn't or whatever, but if I'm in a place, like, I don't want them to feel like I'm taking their picture. I don't want them to, not that they not know that I'm taking their photo, but by the time they either know or they felt it, it's already done. Like, it's like a finger prick. You have to think, like, man, no, I don't want the shot. Well, it's done already. So I'll shoot with my thumb instead of, if you put that camera up to your face, plus I'm 6'1", right? I'm 6'1", I'm African American. At the end of the day, like, I'm a male. I'm not that small. So, like, I'm not 4'11", like a thin woman where, it's just like, oh, okay, like they notice, but they don't really care. Like, who's that dude taking photographs who's taller than most of the people around here? I stand out. I definitely stand out in India. It's quite obvious I'm not Indian. And so, when you're doing that, it's like, okay, how can I get that? Click, 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 click. Or we were riding around on the bike, like I started taking pictures with my left hand under the camera and pushing it from the other side and then shooting on the bike. Because, like, I can't shoot with they don't really make left-handed cameras. Like, $30,000, $40,000 cameras come in both ways. But, like,
it's a conspiracy, bro.
Exactly.
The whole world's set up against left-handed people.
So, like, if you've got a camera, it's right-handed. So, but a motorbike, the gas is on the right. It's with my right hand. So I can't shoot and push the gas at the same time. So if I take my hand off the gas and I go to shoot, I'm slowing down. But if I'm slowing down, I've got Balinese dudes behind me, like, Like, yo, like, you're slowing down. Let's go. We got moves to make. So I'm shooting it now with my left hand. I'm pulling it across my body and still riding. And I'm like, hitting people.
That's some extreme photography, bro.
So I developed that while on a bike,
on like your second day learning
trying
how to ride a bike.
Trying to follow you. So this is like I don't know if people really understand this in context. It's like, you're on a motor scooter, like on a 2-lane road, which is, it's technically a 2-lane, road in the sense that there is a side, but the side is really subjective. And so, then there's the left lane of the lane, and then there's the right. There's the left side of the left lane, and then there's the right side of the left lane. Mm-hmm. And the left side of the left lane is really for slowing, for slower riding, turning if you're turning in that direction. The right side is pretty much for overtaking and moving faster. Mm-hmm. And so this is happening. So it's not like you're in the States where for the most part people are waiting their turn. It's not rude. Like,
no turn.
They're passing you. And you don't really know, so you can't weave in your own lane. You're not weaving across the lane. You can't weave in your own lane because a dude's coming, and he might hit the horn just to let you know, hey, bro, like, I'm over here, right? And you need to, so if you crash into him, it's your fault. So you're doing this. You're on the road. Boom, you're doing all that. Then you're following somebody. So you got to see what they're doing. Anything could happen. A truck could come out. He could slow down. While you're holding this camera, while you're trying to, steady this motorbike, and you're trying to like shoot someone in focus and like time it right without looking through the lens, right? Mm-hmm. So you're really kind of shooting it from the hip. So it's actually some real cowboy type stuff. But yeah, so it's
but that's actually a question I had, like, because more than other art forms, like technology has altered art forms. It's altered music a lot. Both the production of music and especially the business of music. With streaming, but. A camera was something that not that many people had even 10, but definitely 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, and so now in the age of, iPhone cameras and Instagram, everybody's a photographer. So, in a certain sense, it's like, I don't know, do you feel like that alters the art form?
It does. But like for me, that doesn't bother me. Maybe it's because I came from a technical background, or maybe because technology has kind of pushed everything forward, and I don't think it's altered it necessarily in a. I'm not gonna say. I don't think that it's all bad. I think there's good aspects to it, and I think there's bad aspects to it. But I feel like on a broader sense, it's more good than bad because more people are exposed to photography. And more people appreciate photography in and of itself, even just out of the fact that maybe they take crappy pictures. Where before they might think, oh, I can do that.
As long as they realize they take crappy pictures.
If all your friends and everybody else is taking crappy pictures too, then you won't think so. And then you run across someone who doesn't, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely not that good, you know what? But I guess it's almost like rapping, Like, it came out and everybody was like, no, I can kick a verse, like if you're around a group of people and look, I do fraternity events and, not to necessarily racialize it, but, like you have groups of just kind of like all white folks in the States and, and you listen to them, it's like, no, like, no, check out. Look, I got it, bro. And you listen to it and you're like, that's absolutely horrible. It's like the worst rhyme. Yeah. I'm like, yo, that's the worst rhyme I've ever heard. Like, it's not good, But like you're around your really crappy rapping friends, so like to them, right. That's the best that you guys freestyle. That's the best your group came up with. So you're like, no, like it rhymed, and I'm like, technically, But like if you get exposed to other people that like, okay, right. So you're in the right circles. Now you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not good. I got to get better, right? And so, in a way. It's kind of like the exact same thing. It's like, okay, if you're around all your friends taking selfies and iPhone pictures, then you might think, oh my God, that's a really good photo, right? Then you start meeting some people who actually take pictures, and then you're like, actually my photo's okay, But then you got but then on the flip side, you've got some people that, man, they got some really, they're just regular folks. They're not, like, they don't really consider themselves photographers, and you look at their work and you're like, That's amazing. Like, how'd you do that? You know, they don't do it for a living. Oh, I just shoot it for fun. And their work's amazing. And so I just feel like on one instance, you know, it's given a lot of regular people access to kind of photography, and they can capture their world, and it gives us more insight. And on the other hand, you know, it's given people that, you know, the aspect to just make really bad work. So, you know.
I guess, technology is a great equalizer because, rap's the same thing. Like before, you had to get in a studio, you had to get signed to a label. Studio time was precious. Now it's just like you got a studio on your iPhone, basically. You know what I mean?
Make that beat in GarageBand, you know, pull that mic out. You go to the Apple store, you come out, you know, you're Andre. You think you're Andre 3000 now. You're making beats. You know, you're on the track. You're like, you know, I got the new Mac. You know, you got the iPad Pro. You know?
It's weird just the idea that we live in where there was certain people there was a very select group of people that were like artists, that lived this lifestyle, performing and recording. Very few people that are like models or even photographers for that matter. There's very few specialists in any field. And now like everything's been collapsed and everyone's like an Instagram model and an Instagram rapper and a freaking Instagram, photographer. And like, it's just a trip. But on the same level, I mean, part of it's good because it levels the playing field. And then those that are dope, I guess they'll rise to the top. I'm not sure if I'm convinced of that because a lot of stuff just gets drowned out.
I mean, until you have to do it at any type of serious level, and that's when you really start to, like you're talking about, getting on stage, right? Yeah, a lot of funny dudes in school, a lot of funny dudes telling jokes, and you know what, and like and what if their set was like when Instagram video came out, right? Okay, it was like 10 seconds or whatever. Okay, now it's a minute, right? But let's say their set's a minute. Let's say that like I'm an Instagram comedian. All I need to be is funny for 1 minute. Cool, right? You might be amazing. Oh my God, I have 100,000 hits and views and whatever, right? And then you're like, get on that stage. So you got, right? Then you notice real quick, I don't really have what it takes to like sustain a group, a crowd, or this.
Boy, I just got to work at this.
Or maybe you soar, maybe you swim. Maybe you're like, oh shoot, turns out I can, let me not drown. I did all right. And so, that's the thing. It's so long as we're not seeking any type of like serious nourishment from art. So long as we're not, like we're still in the superficial. We're just like, like we're snacking. We're kind of art snacking. So long as that's happening, that's cool. These people can make like little tapas meals and they can make, little appetizers, and it's great.
What do you mean? People just making art for fun, you mean?
Well, it's just like we're not really like ingesting it, like we're looking at little small pieces of it, or, okay. For instance, like to be a photographer successfully on Instagram is not that hard. The reason being is because you don't need to post 15, 20 pictures of the same thing. I just need one. So if somebody said, hey, look, come to Bali and I just need you to get 3 photos. I can literally just like, pray and spray. Like I could just, I'll probably find 3 photos that I could tweak and this and that. And it'd be like, dope, it's amazing. Right. I love it. But if somebody said, look, I need you to give me like a collection. Like I come back with 100 photos, different.
Right.
Matter of fact, it's like, okay, how many people made a single, right? Okay, you rocked a single, I got it, and I got blessed the mic. Boom, that was killer. It was 16 bars. It was like the best I ever did it, right? And then they're like, okay, I need an album. So it's like, okay, well, how long is that album? Well, it's gonna be 15 tracks on the album. Okay, but I need 30.
Yeah.
To like what? I gotta do this 30 more times. Like,
right.
Uh-oh.
For sure.
So it's kind of like that, but if we only listen to singles, but somebody's going to want an album. Somebody's going to be like, what, let's bring albums back. So it's a weird, and as like I said, as technology changes, Instagram's going to then change, right? So even that platform, right? Those people are going to get, they're going to get, it's like they're building their houses on the beach, right there. Right, and the tide's not in right now, and that's cool, right? And they built it, and their house is up fast. It's like, oh, it's up, boom. It wasn't that high. It wasn't this. It was on the beach, right? And we're out here, and other people are out here, like we're like further back, like you're right, but our ground's hard. So we got to like, boom, chop into it and try to whatever and put bamboo and just try to build it. And it's taking a long time. And they're like, haha, your house isn't that nice and blah, blah, blah. But okay, right? The tide's going to come in, and it's going to change. It's all going to be different. There's going to be a new person on the beach, right? But meanwhile, like we can weather kind of that tide. And so, that's just kind of how I look at it is that, build your house out of bricks and not out of sand.
So what predominantly type of photographs are you doing now? You said you were doing commercial stuff.
Yeah, so I still do a lot of stuff for nonprofits and brands, and I do a lot of fashion stuff, but I guess kind of traveling has really exposed me to a whole new, kind of world. And so, I just like traveling, that stuff. I just shoot it for fun. I just want to capture that, just where I go a place. Because then it gets back into the places I've lived and the neighborhoods and, and Black Americans and things like that, where, the people never been out of, forget leaving the country, like we're talking about people never left their state. You're talking about people never left their coast, people never left their state, people never left their city, people, like, they don't even leave their neighborhoods. And so, you're going to Bali, you're going to Indonesia, cats don't even know where Indonesia is, right? Like cats don't even know where stuff is in Europe. So you're going to a place and then you're bringing something back for them to visually see. But not just any old photo. It's like it's an essence of it. They're like, this almost doesn't even look real. And just that seeing that photograph, right? It might ignite something in their head. It might just kind of like, tease the excitement and like, you know what? Maybe I want to go. This guy I know came back. He showed us this stuff. Maybe I can go. Maybe it's possible. Or maybe you know what? Maybe I'm not gonna go to Bali, but maybe I'll go to the West Coast. Maybe I'll check out California. That beach looked dope. Let me go there. And so, a lot of that's why for me, like even taking the photographs of a place, it's like I really want to capture what it feels like to almost live there. Not what it feels like to visit, because I'm not really a tourist. I don't need tourism, and that just it's a totally different way to use my camera. And it really makes me appreciate, like, when I go back to Baltimore or whatever, just like seeing droves of African Americans is not really a normal thing around the United States, or just like corner chicken spots, and you just like there's an affinity, just the dude, even the dude selling weed on the corner, just the language people use, the accents and the slang, and it's just you're like, wow, it's special. It becomes special all of a sudden. Just the ordinary becomes.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I mean, when you mention like, because we just get attuned to our surroundings, and then things are no longer surprising. Like everything is just mundane. It's like, yeah, I know that Chevron on the corner. I know that McDonald's there. I know the movie theater there. You know what I mean? It just becomes mundane. Mm-hmm. And we're creatures of habit, and we get in patterns. And so then it's just like you're plugged in. You're kind of on autopilot. And especially for most people that are plugged into some 9 to 5, especially if they don't love it, you just like, just to get through it, you got to kind of put yourself on autopilot. You know what I mean? And the thing about travel is it breaks that monotony. Like all of a sudden, because everything's new, even like the things that are mundane, like just each street is new and the faces are new. And especially when you're in like a place that's quite foreign culturally, like the religion is different, or the spices, the smells, the sights, everything. It's like, wow, there's so little that's familiar. And what I find is cool is, one, is it makes you like heightened. You're aware, like all your senses are heightened. And then also, it gives you a little bit of the best thing about travel for me that a lot of people don't realize, because people think, oh, when you travel, you see the world and you get to learn about other cultures. Yes, but that's secondary. The actual primary benefit that I find is that you learn about your own culture and your own received tradition and what you didn't even know. Like, oh, we do it like this. They do it like this. You know what I mean? Like they say about a language that it's like each language, embedded in each language is a worldview. So if you speak a language, you're actually seeing the world through a different lens.
Yeah.
For instance, and it's definitely true when I learn Arabic. I mean, I'm still learning, but like when I speak in Arabic, I think differently. And Grace, sister here, was saying, because she speaks English and Indonesian. Her mom's Indonesian. And she was just like, because Indonesian is like the way they talk is very like soft and very like chilled out. And I mean, it's a very simple grammatical language. There's no like tense. There's no conjugation of verbs. There's like no, male and female things. There's not even really plural. Like orang is person, and orang is people. You just say it twice. You know what I mean? But point being is she was saying like when she speaks Indonesian, everything about how she sees the world, how she acts, her body language changes than when she speaks English, which is she also speaks fluently. She grew up in London. You know what I mean? So point being though is that not only languages but cultures, worldviews, civilizations, they have embedded within them paradigms and perspectives, understandings, unquestioned assumptions, how people do things. And until that you are shown that other people do things differently, you wouldn't realize it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely, it definitely teaches you about yourself, because, especially if you go to a place that's vastly different. If you come from America and you go to a relative, if you go to Canada, it's a relative Western nation and it feels similar, but you actually notice very quickly, if you're experiencing that, wow, I'm a very American.
Right. Yeah, because it's so similar, the differences do stick out, right?
Wait a minute, or you go to a place and you're just trying to figure out simple things. And it does make you either question or validate or whatever. Why are we doing that? Wait a minute, these people are doing something different. Wait, but it's working for them, so so you start reevaluating aspects of your own life and your own identity, and you start thinking, okay, there's other options, and it's definitely, it's a, it either makes you appreciate the things that work, and it makes you almost kind of, it loosens your grasp on the things that don't work, whereas maybe before you wanted to hold on to them just because they're an aspect of your identity because they came from you. But then you go to other places where they might not even care about it. They don't even think about it. And so by going to that other place, you're able to let go of things that don't necessarily serve you or serve your interest. And going to another country is kind of it's not extreme's not the word I want to use, but it's kind of a more expansive way to do that. But even inside the United States, for instance, just going to another state, you become 18, you leave. Let's say I use Baltimore because that's where I was living. You leave Baltimore and you go to Oakland. You go to Santa Cruz or San Jose. There's a totally different cultural narrative, and so you can let go of certain things from there. Maybe you didn't need and pick up new things. And so, it's definitely, it definitely changes you. You come back different. And that's what's tripped out. Like you can't even see your own world the same. And people are like, you come back different.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that, like, yeah, exactly what you say is like, especially, like in America, Black people of color, in certain ways in America, you're a second-class citizen. But if you leave America with that blue passport, you're in the 1%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, right this way. You're going through the lines, you know what I mean? You can get in anywhere without a visa.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you know what I mean? And that blue passport is like the golden ticket. Like you won the lottery. But people, if you don't leave, you wouldn't know that necessarily.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that it's that it's gold, in other places, and you get to other places and you start looking at what your dollar's worth, connecting to that, and you're like, oh, that's like I said, that was the story that and Nick said about went to this restaurant. She said she went to this restaurant and there was it was like the best brisket that she'd ever had, You know, it was in Indonesia. It's an amazing restaurant. It was great. And she asked the guy who was making it, you know, had he ever had it? And, you know, and it was, you know, I forgot how much she said it was. It wasn't like stupid expensive, you know, in relation to, you know, maybe it was $30, you know, maybe. Mm-hmm. You know, she said it was the best brisket I ever had. You know, she has it. And so she asked, you know, had he ever eaten it? He looked at her like, you know, it's like, no. You know, he's like, I've never had that. You know, he's like, I can't eat that. You know, and he's like, that burger, that sandwich, that's like my rent. Like, that's how much my rent costs.
He's eating like $1 a day worth of food.
You know,
so 30
exactly.
days, that's a month.
Exactly. You know, we're out here.
It's a month worth of food.
And so to us, you know, like you come to a place and you realize, you know, you got a blue passport and that $1, man, like you're balling. You're like a king of a place. You know, you're rich, like a rich Saudi. You know, you got oil money basically. You know, but like back at home, you're like, man, I'm trying to pay my rent.
And that's the thing. Like people say, oh, you travel, yeah, well, that's a privilege, and to a certain extent, yeah, but it's like the privilege actually is time in America. Like a lot of people just don't have the time to travel because you don't get a lot of time off. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that you need.
Exactly.
I'll agree with that. But as far as money, it's like, you know, yeah, if you stay in the Four Seasons and you're like staying in resorts, it costs a lot of money. But like, you know, how I travel, how you travel, like we're trying to have an authentic experience. We're not trying to like be sequestered away from the locals in some like all Western resort experience. You know what I mean? So like, if you live like, you know, the locals, and you don't even have to live all the way like that. You know what I mean? My point is that like, 2 G's goes a long way here. You know what I mean? Like in Indonesia, like I couldn't spend $1,000 a month if I tried. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, that's what? That's like 6 pair of Jordans. You know, that's like 3 pair of Kanye's or something. So like, you know, if you think like I can't afford to go travel, that's some rich people stuff. It's like, just reprioritize.
That's shared rent in like a 3-bedroom house, you know, like in somewhere like in a not sketch neighborhood in LA. You know, that's a closet in San Francisco. You know, like you get this closet and you can crash on the couch for $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
right.
Like I knew I had to get out of the Bay when there's literally a dude who pitched a tent in his backyard in San Francisco and was renting it for $1 a month. Like you can use the bathroom. You stay inside. You stay in the tent, and you get to use the restroom inside the house. I was like, gotta go.
Exactly. You're like, you know, like I could own a villa, like a straight like 3-4 houses, you know. And that's it's like you don't. There's just stuff we convince ourselves that we need because you know we're looking at it from the prism of where we're at, and so you know, and that's like I said.
Yeah, and there's this thing, you know, and like the center for Bali's a center for it. Chiang Mai, Thailand is a center for it. A few other places. It's something that they call digital nomads, right? You're probably up on it. It's this idea that, and it's mostly young people, mostly people in their 20s actually at this point. And basically, they're graphic designers. They do other jobs online, whatever it is. They don't need to physically be in a place. Some of them are like freelance. Some of them work for companies actually, but they don't need to physically be there. And so say you do freelance work for some company in San Francisco. All right. If you're in San Francisco, your rent is 2 G's a month. At least, easily more. Even if you're sharing a spot, 1,500 minimum. That's crazy to find that. So you could be in Chiang Mai, or you could be in Bali, or you could be a bunch of other places, and there's co-working spaces, or you could just get Wi-Fi at your pad, and your rent is $200 a month, $300 a month, and you're eating good food every day. That's Thai food or whatever, right, in Chiang Mai.
Smoothie bowls,
and you know what I mean?
Coconut water.
It's like, you can't even spend $30 a day on food if you tried. And so it's like, And people like you're a nomad because you'd be like, yo, I'll live in Bali for 6 months and I'll go to Thailand for 6 months and I'll go, let's see where to next. And it's funny because the tax laws haven't even caught up with these people because they're like, well, where do you live? No, I don't live anywhere. Like I live everywhere. You know what I mean? And it's like Yassine, most deaf, his whole thing, a country called Earth, you know, and him just dipping out of the States. And I think in this globalized world now, you know, this idea that, yeah, I'm from a place, I'm from a country, but this idea of like global citizenship, you know, Dustin Cron, Life Beyond Borders, he has this, you know, this thing, and it's like there's so many people, especially young people, who grew up in the internet age and who are connected to people all over the world and who share interests with people all over the world. And now it's like you may share interests in some subculture that you're into. You live in San Francisco, but you know, share interests with someone in Tokyo, and way more than your next door neighbor in San Francisco. And so this like, there's actually like some digital tribe thing going on where people are like, you know what I mean? Coalescing around non-physical things. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not like we're a tribe because we're from this area on the map, like this piece of dirt. You know what I mean? And I think for young people, like, it's a lot less important. Like, this idea, like, I'm an American. Like, I think most young people are like, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Like the more you meet, you know, the more your circle diversifies, you know, and you start to, you know, everyone's from somewhere, you know, everyone's got their own norms and their own things. There's an aspect of you having to kind of table some of that, not being either not proud of it or whatever. You just have to table that because of the fact that, you know, it's not irrelevant, but it's not as purposeful. You know, me being American is great. Movies, TV, this, all, whatever it is that it means to be. But how does that help, you know, being a part of a group, whatever that is, you know, like, oh, we're going to do it. Like, you know, this is not the space race, you know, you know, like, you know, we're trying to work together. We're all trying to do whatever it is. You know, you've got people, you know, that they've got great things in their country. They've got problems in their country. You know, we've got problems in our country. We've got great things in our country. And it's like, I'm just no longer interested in fighting battles for like large swaths of land, you know,
you feel me?
You know, and not even like to have it for yourself, but for random for
governmental body.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm not
fight some other kid in another.
I'm not taking into your beefs. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to beef with some guy. You know what I'm saying? In Germany, you know, who's just trying to like feed his family and do X, Y, Z. You know, because some other guys, most likely, you know, are in a board meeting playing chess with people's lives. Like, I'm just, you know what, dude? You know, we can go kick it in Bali, like where none of us are from, you know, and have a good time, not have to worry about none of that stuff. And so it's it's a broader kind of thing. And one of the things like I really super respect about, I guess, being here and observing is like, especially like up north, like Ubud, was like everything's an act of worship for these, you know, for the people there, you know, like it doesn't, you know, like even, it's almost like even driving's an act of, you know, like it's an act of worship. When you ride on that motorbike, like they want you to succeed. They want you to win. You know, like I want you to get to where you're going. I want you to cross the street. I want you to, you know, whatever. It's like, you know, like just kind of don't jack up everyone else in the process, but like, you know, like we'll let you through, you know, like I'm not trying to hit you, I'm not trying to hurt you, you know, it's no worries, like, you know, be easy. You know, like they want you to win, and so because it's tied to like a broader understanding of the world. Like, no, it's a problem, no problem. Look, we got that. It's easy, you know, like, you know, like even like I caught the cab or whatever, like the Uber here, you know, and the guy, these dudes were trying to like get me to do the Uber, or they were the taxi guys or whatever, and I got the conversion number wrong, and so I'm thinking that they're going to charge me, because you got to get used to the fact that they'll say 100 and it's really like 100K, you know, and so like off the top of your head, like it just doesn't translate on the top of your head. So the Uber was going to be like 90K, Yeah, I think it was gonna be like 90K. And then the dudes were telling me, but they don't really say it was 100. They were like 20. They were like, okay, yeah, like we'll take you, I'll take you for like 100, or I'll take you for like 2. It was the way that they were saying it seemed like it was cheaper. Like the dude was gonna do it almost like the dude was gonna do like the Uber was gonna be like 900K, but the Uber was actually only 90K because it's too many zeros. It's not like there's a comma on it. Like I mean there is, but there isn't. So I ended up canceling the Uber because I was like I couldn't find the guy or whatever. I was like this is a whole lot cheaper. Then the Uber guy's like yo I'm here whatever like where you at? So I ended up telling the guys I said look well I'm gonna wait 5 minutes if the Uber guy can find me where I'm at. Okay, I'm gonna go with him. If not, but I already canceled the Uber, so I went with the Uber guy. He tells me okay where it is, GPS. It's nighttime. Like I don't know these dudes. You know what I'm saying? I've never been to Indonesia before. I've never been to Bali. I don't know how it is down here. It's gonna be Bangkok. I don't know how it is. Right? Like India is a little. You can end up. I don't know. You can end up Turkey. You can end up in a sketch place. So we pretty much get here. Now I don't have any Indonesian money on me, so. And Uber would have charged me straight to the card. So I'm like, all right, I've got Australian money on me, though. I got U.S. money, but I got Australian dollars. So I do the conversion. So I'm like, all right, I'll give him like $10 Australian, which is more than what the Uber would have been. And he was like 200K. The Uber was only 90K. So I'm like, nah, like the Uber said it was going to be 90, And he was like, but you canceled the Uber. I'm like, you're the Uber dude. Like, what? Like,
oh, no. So he was like, even though I'm an Uber driver, we're not doing it with Uber.
Saying?
I'm just like, your driver now.
I'm like, you just converted to a regular dude? Like, what? Like, I was like, that doesn't even, like in my mind, I'm like, that doesn't even make sense, right?
That's funny.
But, so he's telling me, and I'm like, okay, like, boom, it's like 10. I'm explaining it to him, and he's just like, okay, it's fine. Like the 10's fine. But he's not saying it like aggravated. He's just kind of saying like, okay, almost like it's not worth it to even like get anything up about. But then he says it so kind of like okay, that I'm like, whoa, wait a minute now. Like I don't want you thinking I'm like strong arming you, because I'm a tourist. I'm speaking English. He might be like, I can't make this guy give me 200. So I'm like, hold up now. Like this is the reason why I'm saying this. It's more than whatever, right? Like I want you I'm not cheating. I want you to think I'm cheating you. And he was like, okay, whatever. But I don't know if he really got it, So I gave him another 5. I was like, yo, here's 15 Australian, I don't want you thinking I'm cheating you, Because he just seemed like genuine, he was just like, okay. I was like, no, I don't want you thinking like I took this dude came from America, came all the way down here. He tried to cheat me out of this ride, you know what I'm saying? It's 15 Australian dollars, was like 8 American dollars anyway, right? So for a 45-minute ride from the airport, like it really was like ridiculous. So, but just in that example was just the fact that, to him, it seemed obvious after being here that this idea that he has no interest in trying to cheat somebody, not even like remotely. Like if you have an issue with it, it's not worth it. The money's not even worth like the weight that you were like dissatisfied with it. And so it's a totally different,
it's deep. And if you don't travel outside of America and you're in an environment where people are trying to get over on each other and there's road rage because you got to defend yourself and you're like, hey, watch out, and like there's this kind of like just natural aggression, man. Like I remember I was out here in Southeast Asia for like a year. Oh no, I was not a year, like 8 months. And then I went to the U.S. I was in the Bay Area, and it was like a biker and a dude in a truck, and like whatever, one cut the other off, and there was a bunch of and like screaming and like what I mean, out the window at each other, and I'm just like I started laughing because that literally would never happen here. Would never. Not like less, like would never. Because they don't look at the world that way. There's no concept of like, but me. There's no concept of, but I have to assert myself. Like, it's just like, oh, you win. Like, hey, it worked out. Like, you didn't hit me. You kind of cut me off, but that's all good. You know what I mean? And like, we forget, man, that it's just like that. Like, and the same thing when I travel, like, when I was like 21 and I went to Yemen and I was, studying and with some of these great spiritual masters and just saw people in the environment and how generous people were and how like, oh, hey, you're here? Like, if you walk up to someone drinking tea or eating, they'll be like, here, join us. Like, you don't know them, a stranger. Like, can you imagine in America, like, so you're just eating on the street, like at a restaurant, and someone walks by, like, you want to join? This idea, like, well, someone's walking by, they might be hungry. You can't. It's a shame for you to not do that. And just the level of, like, selflessness and the way people just go out of their way. Like, the other day, here in Bali, I was looking for something. I didn't know where it was. I was like, hey, where's this thing? And I pull up to these people, they have this little, like, warung, little, like, local food shop. And I was like, where is it? And they're like, oh, it's over that way. You go that way. And I was like, wait, so what do I do? Like, I could have figured it out if they would have just, like, but dude goes, just wait. Hops on his bike and shows me. And it's like, whatever, 5 blocks away. And so he's like, here it is. And then he just goes back to his restaurant. You know what I mean? And I was like, dang, okay. But that's just the spirit. Like, and I think part of it, there's just not a competitive spirit here. There's more a communal spirit.
Yeah.
It's like, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And I think that's really lost for some reason in America, in the West, in a lot of places where, and maybe it's just the ethos of America. It's like capitalism. We're all against each other competing. But there's just not this idea here. Like, we're not competing. Like, we're in this together. We're cooperating.
Maybe they don't have a guilty conscience.
Mm.
I mean, I feel like, when you kind of colonize people's land and kind of like jack them for it, kind of swipe some people and then bring them to work on it. And then, those people you swiped are still there and still kind of remember that stuff. And the people whose land you kind of jacked are kind of still there. And, it's like, you just don't know, like, are these people trying to pay me back yet?
I don't even think it's that. I think it's, like Gandhi said, he was talking about the structural thing. Like, he was like, we can't be mad at these British people that are coming over in these like managerial jobs of the colony to colonize us, because it's a structural problem. They're just they're just a cog in a machine. They're actually victims. That was he was really emphatic. They're victims. You know what I mean? They may be the aggressors upon us, but they're also victims in the structure. You see what I'm saying? And so most people, I don't think they even like think about that.
So I don't necessarily mean it's not a conscious thing, right? It's kind of like it's almost a transfer guilt, and it's not guilt in the sense of that they're like, oh my God, we did all these things, such and such. It's that the very foundation and the very system of America as a country is founded on those things, and I feel like the people who are pretty much at the top, the 1%, like they know, like, I mean, if you have 1%, and that's more than all the wealth of the 99% of the people below it, like, eventually, like, there's a reason that you structured it in a way. It's to protect yourself. It's like, why do you need to aggregate that much wealth? Why do you need to for whatever the reason? It's why you don't know who they are, because people then start complaining about it. And so I feel like, in a way, the system is structured to make everybody else adversarial against each other. And because of that, because it's like, well, look out for that guy, look out for that guy, because that guy wants your stuff, and that guy wants your stuff. And, and it's to confuse, part of it, I think, is to confuse the fact that perhaps this guy maybe doesn't want your stuff. Or maybe he only wants your stuff because he doesn't have anything. And you think he wants your stuff because you don't have anything, because these people actually have everything. And so, they want, but here, maybe, everyone's, okay, that guy's got a house and he's got food and he's got whatever. Do you not have, a house and some food or whatever? Okay, look, hey, can we make sure that he's got a house and some food and some, and some stuff? And so for the most part, so I say, like, there's not really a collective guilt across the community to kind of say, like, that we've got a legion of people that don't have anything. So, they're like out to get us in a way, or we need to like keep them at bay. They're like, okay, this guy's got. So it's a weird, but in the States, you feel this almost this disparity in the sense of like,
And there's just pressure on everyone to like not fall off, and you know what I mean. It's because of the like extreme, independence. Like we're all alone. It's kind of like the philosophy behind it. Like but yeah, I mean, like all these happiness studies and mental health studies are showing, like, for instance, they've done a lot of studies on, Mexicans that live in Mexico, in small villages, essentially in poverty compared to like U.S. standards. But then they come to America. Their children come to America. All the statistical evidence shows that those poor villagers in Mexico, higher happiness, less mental health issues, depression, et cetera, but then they move to America and their children have equal rates of depression and mental health issues as the average American. And I think, like the longest study on happiness, the Harvard study on happiness, 75 years. They followed these people for 75 years. And what was crazy about it is, I forget, I don't want to mess up the study, you can look it up, but if I remember correctly, they followed like a bunch of Harvard undergrads, but then they didn't want it to just be specific like college students, because especially 75 years ago, college was a much more elite thing. So then they followed like an equal number of people from the like inner city in Boston. So it's like, okay, we got these college kids, but we also have like poor people in from the inner city, and we're gonna like track happiness. And basically, they followed up for 75 years, like every year. These people agreed to be part of this study, so then they wrote them every year, or they communicated with them, phone call or whatever, and they reported on like a whole bunch of things. How much money do you make? How many children? All this stuff. How's your health, et cetera, et cetera. But it all came down to, and how happy are you? And how do you rate your happiness? What makes you most happy? Et cetera, et cetera. And basically, it all came out to say that the number one, there was actually a level at which more money didn't increase your happiness. And now $70,000.
Yeah.
So you're making under 70K, like you're struggling like to make ends meet.
Exactly.
But if you got over 70K annually in the United States of America, if you got 80K, you're not more happy.
Exactly.
If you got 100, if you got $1 million, you're not more happy. But what did make people happy was the value of their relationships. That they felt that they had good relationships, they were part of their community, they played a role. And of course, I read this really dope book, I think Sebastian Junger or something, I forget his name, but the book is called Tribe. And he's a journalist, and he at first looked at, what started him about this is he wrote about, I think he even embedded as like a war correspondent, but then he wrote about soldiers that came home. And he interviewed all of them and looked at all the studies and statistics. And he found that there was a high percentage of them that said, I don't want to go back to war, but that was the best time of my life. That was the time I felt most alive. I felt most fulfilled. I felt like I was really living, and then I come back here and it's just gray. Like, what am I doing? Like, life just lost its potency. And he shows it, part of it's PTSD and stuff like this, but a lot of it, he argues, comes down to the fact that what he argues is that we evolved for hundreds of thousands of years to be in small bands, tribes, essentially. And I forget the number. Dunbar's number is like 150 people, meaning you can recognize 150 people. Past that point, people just become a mass. Like, you basically can't keep more than 150 relationships, that he argues. Anyway, goes on to say that after a certain number of tribes tend to split off because, all right, well, there's too many of us, so we'll go over here. We're exhausting the resource or whatever. So we're in small bands of less than 100 people for the 99% of our evolutionary history, according to the dominant theory of how we got here. And so, it's like we actually are unwell if we are not part of a collective and fulfilling a role. Our happiness is part of us, is like being needed, being wanted, having these reciprocal relationships where, I'm doing something that's benefiting others. Others are doing things that benefit me. And without that, when you have hyper-individualism, like the modern West, people become sick. Like the opiate crisis, the depression, like American people are just sick in record numbers of humanity. So we're doing something wrong. Something about how we structured our society is wrong, especially considering that we have more abundance and wealth than at any time in human history. So why are we all so freaking sad and depressed?
Unfulfilled. Like that sums it up for the most part, right? You're not living, like what's that intention? What's that purpose? Like we do things for the sake of doing things, We live in a society in which people are famous for being famous. Like we do stuff, we don't even know why we're doing it. Like this, what's there's a quote, and I don't even remember who wrote it. It says that it said we buy things with money we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. Yeah. Like we're living for the optics of essentially. So we don't really have what's the purpose in that? Like, what's the point? Why do you buy this? Why do we do this? Why do we have relationships with these people? To impress those folks or whatever. Like, who's our community? Who's important? Who matters? And shoot, if you're part of that unit, you think about it, man. If you're in the military, you're a soldier. You're over there, right? There is a small group of individuals that essentially you have to trust with your life. You guys trained together. You did what's named. You went over there. You were part of that unit, and you needed that. You had a purpose. You knew what you were doing. You were accomplishing tasks and missions. You were told it was for the better of something. You believed it was for the better of something. And you come back, and you really don't know what it was for, and you really don't know what these people are doing. Right. And and that's I feel like that's why people join gangs. Yeah.
For sure. And I've listened to interviews with like veterans that were in the Iraq War recently. And, they all say, they're like, it wasn't like I was fighting for the brother next to me. Like that was my brother. It wasn't for my country at that point. It wasn't for anything but just those brothers that were next to me, that trained with me, that ate with me, that slept with me. Like that was my tribe. So I was going to be on point so he didn't catch a hot one. It wasn't on some like super huge, lofty, like
Captain America
philosophy about saving the country. It was like really viscerally like, I want us all to go home.
I go home, you go home. Yeah. That's it, right? Boom. Dude, save the man next to me. So to bring that full circle. So when I push that button on that camera, you know what I'm saying? Like this, I try to have there's some type of purpose to it. There's some type of intention. Maybe that intention is like, look, I need to take this picture because I have clients, so I can get this dollar, right? Or maybe it's I want to capture something, or maybe whatever. But there's some type of intention behind it. I'm not just pushing the button, for photo's sake in a way, And so, that gets all the way back to the first question you pretty much asked is, when I get to a place, I don't pull the camera out, because there's no inspiration yet. There's no purpose, It's not to just take a picture. So it's like, what am I trying to take a picture of, and why, and what's it for, and who's it capturing? What's that? Is that guy interesting, or that woman interesting, or that that rooster? And so that's kind of the gist of it.
Alhamdulillah.
For me.
Cool, bro. Well, about bedtime for me, man. It's good talking to you. I don't know how long we've been rapping, but
I don't know.
It's been a hot minute.
Podcasting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for listening to Path and Present Podcast. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so in a few ways. One is word of mouth. People hear about the podcast mostly from people like you who listen and like it and say, I know someone who would connect with this, or who would feel this, or who would enjoy this subject matter. So continue to share with your family and friends. Secondly, you can subscribe, rate, and comment on the iTunes page of Path and Present. Subscribing means that the podcast each episode will come directly to you when we release it. And rating and commenting means that it will grow and come up in the iTunes rankings, which will allow it to be available and seen by more people. And then lastly, you can support financially on Patreon. Patreon is a site which allows people to give a small amount monthly to support art or any type of content. And we have a Path and Present page on Patreon. The link is on our SoundCloud page, SoundCloud/Path and Present. And you'll find the Patreon link there. And yeah, you can support there, and we're greatly appreciative of it. I guess lastly, keep us in your prayers, your positive thoughts, and your moments of remembrance. And thank you for tuning in and being part of the global Path and Present family. One love.